Then I took a smidge and applied it down there.
This one's wife. Wimbledon hate. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Imagine that you're a tennis fan, and one of the most prestigious tennis tournaments is naturally Wimbledon. Many people would like to attend, but aren't able to afford a ticket, or if they can, they were unable to secure one. However, imagine that you have been able to afford and secure a ticket, so you decide that you're going to go along and watch some of the tennis action. You just happen to be a well-known individual that people know about you as a consequence of the job that you do. You accept that with that comes a degree of intrusion into your life because people will recognize you. And dependent upon the way that they're predisposed towards you, this means that they either want to have a selfie taken with you, get an autograph, tell you how much they loved your recent book, film, sporting performance, or it might be that they shoot you a disapproving look, or worse, start berating you. Many famous people understand that that is what comes with the territory, and for the most part are able to either remove themselves from a problematic individual or embrace the enthusiasm of their friends, or where the individual continues to prove to be difficult, have them removed. Nevertheless, where an individual who is recognised, is well known, is famous, is subjected to unpleasant treatment, this doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to take it sitting down. And we have an excellent example of this with regard to the unpleasant, nasty behaviour of a troll. Have a look at this. You may be familiar with Camilla Tominey. She's a journalist for the Daily Telegraph. I have utilised some of her articles for the purpose of explaining the behaviour of this one's wife. You may well have read some of her articles about this one's wife and other individuals. She doesn't pull any punches, and she's certainly no fan of this one's wife. She, as a journalist, reports on her and, like anybody else on the planet, is entitled to express an opinion. She goes to Wimbledon, and she then happens to have the misfortune that a sugar is sat behind her. Somebody operating by the handle Judy in Richmond, which I think tells you plenty already about this type of individual, put a post stating, "Sat behind Camilla Tominey," note the lack of capitalisation of somebody's name, "at Wimbledon. Don't worry, hashtag Sussex Squad. I mentioned I was a Harry and this one's wife fan, and that she blocked me on Twitter for calling her a wanker." Accordingly, this individual thinks that it is acceptable to harangue an individual who is attending an event in a private capacity. You may well recognise that individual and think, oh look, there's that journalist that disapproves of Harry and this one's wife. I don't like her. You are allowed to have that view. But you also ought to recognise the boundary that Camilla Tominey isn't there in a professional capacity. It's not, for example, that she is giving a talk about this one's wife and Harry, where if she were inviting questions, it might be fair enough for you to respond by saying that you don't think much of her behaviour. However, this is a private event, and she's there in a personal capacity. She's not there as writing as a journalist for The Telegraph. She is either there on her own, maybe with the lady to her left or the gentleman to her right. That might be her husband, it might be a friend, who knows. But the fact is, it once again demonstrates the entitled nature and the idiocy of the Shuggers, that having seen somebody who raises legitimate criticisms of this one's wife, feels the need to not only say, oh, hello, I'm a fan of Harry and this one's wife, like Camilla Tominey gives a shit about what you think, but then also to remind her, you blocked me on Twitter for calling you a wanker. Well, this not only demonstrates that you're rude, obnoxious, and a poor recogniser of boundaries, it also, Judy in Richmond, also demonstrates that you're an epsilon semi-moron, because all that you'll have done is remind Camilla Tominey of why she was entirely justified for blocking you in the first place. You're an unpleasant, odious individual. However, once again demonstrating the short-sighted dim-wittedness of the sugar hive mind, it also meant that when Judy in Richmond posts this on X, Camilla Tominey doesn't just sit back and decide, well, it's another clown. No, I'm going to actually call this individual out with some facts. And you will see that Camilla Tominey responds by stating, "You were rude and obnoxious and annoyed everyone sitting in our area with your drunken screaming and shouting. Try laying off the sauce and showing some self-awareness next time you are in public, you vile troll." What a surprise. Member of the Sussex squad exhibits rude behaviour towards journalists. They've got form in this regard, haven't they? Do you remember when a member of the Sussex squad confronted Tom Bauer at the Invictus Games and he dealt with it admirably? That he was pleasant and courteous and then ultimately recognised that he was dealing with someone of subnormal levels of intelligence, so he removed himself from that person? Indeed. And once again, a member of the Sussex squad exhibiting why they have such a reputation for vile and unpleasant behaviour. But Camilla Tominey is no wallflower. She fights back and highlights that this sugar, besides being rude towards her, was rude and obnoxious and annoyed everybody sat around her with the drunken screaming and shouting. I'm surprised the individual wasn't removed by security. But it demonstrates that they really are an odious lot, lacking self-awareness, that behave in an entitled way. It once again demonstrates how they repeatedly call out other people for criticising this one's wife, but then engage in the very behaviour that they complain about in relation to other people. That they are infested with a hatred which actually has no legitimate basis. People are entitled to express opinions, which is what they do. But of course, their mindset is, we're allowed to say it, you are not. That they live vicariously through this one's wife, unable to see the faults as evidenced by plenty of evidence, and instead engage in behaviour here, haranguing a journalist who in a personal time and in a private way is looking forward to enjoying the tennis, only to be subjected to the loud-mouthed, brass and obnoxious interfering behaviour of a dim-witted and unpleasant sugar. But Tominey calls her out and points out once again just how awful the supporters of this one's wife are, which tells you all you need to know about what she is and also the type of people that she attracts. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.